everyone. My name is Davina Fankhauser with the organization Fertility Within Reach. I'd like to thank you for joining us for our Google Hangout on accessing infertility benefits through your employer. Today I have three very special guests with me who did just that. They advocated for infertility benefits with their employer, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what's involved and try to break it down and show you it's probably easier than you think, and it is an opportunity a lot of employees don't realize that they have. So I'm going to actually let my guests introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what their experience has been with communicating with their employers. And Anna, why don't we start with you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Curie, and I used to work for a foundation for 2 years, it was based in New York. Now I actually moved to London, so now I work on a different organization. So for me, so first of all, the foundation that I was working with, it was very much focused on human rights. So, one of the principles of the foundation was access for everybody to healthcare, and that was my specific role in my job, to actually do that for other people, and to support the organizations that would do that. And yes, so when I was approaching HR, I told them, actually, and yes, surprisingly, our insurance did not cover IVF. And I just found it to be incompatible with the principles of the foundation. So I wrote to HR and I said, my job is about access to healthcare. How come there is no coverage? So, and yeah, it was about 1 year and 4 months ago. And basically, the way it worked is that at first they said it was too expensive and like close to impossible. And then I started getting more people who for different reasons need IVF, either already had IVF and put all of their savings on that, or have different social situations or medical conditions that require them to have IVF. So when I was leaving the foundation, we already had 15 people in the group. We put together basically a book about the impact that the lack of coverage had on us individually. So some of the people from the group, they shared their stories, and we sent this book to pretty much all the decision makers in the foundation, including the president. Of course, copied HR, and also got in touch with one of the directors of one of the regional programs, who himself became a dad through IVF. So he was our main person who was pushing for it at the management level. So finally, after 1.5 years almost, we got a policy document, which it's a draft still, but it outlines a very open kind of coverage. There's no age limit. There's no number of tries. It's very blanket. It includes lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people. So, and yeah, this is what's in the works. And I'm still part of the group and following, now from London, of how this happened. And actually, I thought it would be more difficult. But I think because there are so many people who are affected in one way or another, and we are such a diverse group, when we were talking to HR as a group, it was almost impossible for them to suggest any kind of limitations because they were such a diverse.
And I want to put a little spin on that question, because you've already talked about a little bit about what you did. So one of the things I'm wondering is, what was your first step? How to contact the HR, and then how did you keep the conversation going for such a long period of time to reach the success?
So I would say that persistence was definitely one of the things that helped a lot. So the way I started these conversations is that, as I said, because for me, the content of my work was about access to healthcare. So when I reached out to HR, I just started asking them questions. So, why isn't IVF covered? Why isn't healthcare services for trans people not covered? And this is how I started the conversations. And I realized that because, because their coverage wasn't aligned with the principles of the company, they had to do something. And then I also started digging out a lot of information. So I sent them, I was looking, I found Fertility Within Reach, I found Resolve, I found a lot of information that I was sharing, a lot of statistics, articles about how, lack of coverage impacts people's lives. And then once we documented the stories about individual employees, I think that was real. This is when they realized it was really real, and it was very much our workplace wasn't supportive enough of so many of us. And some of the stories are really heartbreaking. When someone had to get their retirement money and use it for IVF, and their mortgage, and it's just when you read them, or had to go abroad and was bleeding in a country in a language which she didn't speak the language, and it was very difficult to go to the doctor. So I think they realized how much people are at what length people are willing to go to have a child, and how much lack of coverage was impacting their lives. Yes.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? So you
Yes,
did a lot of research. So you were preparing for your meeting with the HR, and you said you created a book. Can you describe a little bit about what you prepared and presented to them?
So we basically showed how there is difference in coverage. So for example, we have an office in London or office in Brussels or in Hong Kong. And because each country's legislation and national healthcare system is different, we just showed how much more money it is costing to US-based employees. So we included that. We included some of the statistical information about how many people approximately need that. And this is actually Fertility Within Reach materials are very, very useful for that. And then we asked the group to share their stories. So every person was just writing what was on their mind and what they wanted to share with HR. And because, for many of them, it was a very therapeutic moment, because before they had they thought they were the only one, and they thought that that they didn't feel comfortable sharing the story. So it was a way to share the story, but also in anonymously, that wouldn't bring any repercussions. But at the same time would make a difference. But this was a very effective way to get the stories out, and to and also for us, because we didn't have a space where we could share the stories with each other. It was for us also good to know more about us as a group without getting too personal, and remaining colleagues in this space.
That's great. What you guys have accomplished is just amazing to me. And I'm glad that you came together as a group, because not only are you doing something for the organization and for the other employees, but it was a great kind of support system for each other as you're going through this. Because as you said, and Regina had said, this can be very frustrating at times, trying to communicate, and you have to be persistent. And so having somebody to do it with, just one more follow-up question, because this is so interesting to me. How did you find each other? How did the 15 of you come together?
Basically, I talked about it during our staff meeting, and then people started reaching out to me. And actually, there were a couple of people in my program who had these issues, and they also reached out to other colleagues. And we posted on an internal network as well that we were doing that. So it was a lot of effort actually to get the group together. For the first maybe 6 months, it was just 3 of us, and then once I decided to start talking more about it, and once we started posting on different social networks inside the organization. That's when we got a lot more people. And yeah, some of them were willing to share even on this, journal social network spaces without, worrying about it. So it was also like we were learning from each other about how to be open, about how to talk to managers about it. And it was really, I remember the first meeting we had as a group, some people were just crying because it was just so emotional to know that there are so many of us in one organization. And that, that HR is now has to respond to us because we're so many.
It's wonderful. I mean, it's just amazing. And that's one of the reasons I reached out to you to ask you to participate. But you know that.
I know, that's so awesome.
You both are amazing. And I know Anna had to leave, and I understand that. But, every advocate, it like Anna was saying, this is a human rights experience, that we're going after. And I love that we're able to do this Google Hangout because we are, in a way, being a support and a resource to other people who want to try this moving forward. And men do this as well too. So I worked with, I actually spoke at a conference with a man named Ed. And Ed had gone to his employer in previous years, multiple years, asking them for IVF benefits, and they said no. And after I met with Ed and I told him about, some resources and a tool that Fertility Within Reach had created, he went back to his HR department, shared the tool, and they said, we can see how offering IVF benefits would be an affordable option, for us to provide. And so they adopted another plan that people could choose from, which carried infertility benefits. And now the University of Michigan offers this benefit plan to nearly 8,500 employees. And I know that there were other patients that were communicating with HR and fertility doctors that were affiliated with the university. We're talking to them as well. So I think it's really a mix of having the information, approaching them with good communication skills and coming together and trying to, make a difference for the good of everybody. For me, this has always been about a win-win-win situation. It's good for the couple and their future family. It's good for the employers. It's good for the insurance companies because it saves money in the long run. And yet I don't take lightly the courage that it takes to go to your human resource department and talk about one of the most private and possibly painful experiences of your life. But what I tell people is when they experience being an advocate for themselves, it's empowering. And then once they know how to do it in this one thing, then they're doing it for other issues in their life, or they're helping their friends and family become advocates for themselves. And it's training for when they're parents because they're going to have to be an advocate for their child. So why not practice advocacy in a way that's going to benefit you and you're provided the tools and support that you need? So I love this, and I'm so grateful that you guys